are watching UATV. We're broadcasting from Toronto, Canada, where the conference on Ukrainian reforms is taking place right now. UATV, together with Agri Team Canada, is launching a special series of interviews dedicated to the reforms that are currently ongoing in Ukraine. Today, we're talking about deinstitutionalization, and here in the studio with me is Mykola, Kuleba, Ukraine's President, Commissioner for Children's Rights. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So first of all, let's let our audience know what the reform is all about, what are the goals of the reform, and what result we're going to get once the reform is implemented.
The name of this reform is Institutional Care Reform. Because it's so important, children's is 20% of children's population is 20% of whole population. And it's pity, but 1.5% of whole children's population live in institution. And all over the world, institution is very harmful for children because when child live without parental care, children suffer, and it's really hurts a child. And in Ukraine, we have 95% of these children who have parents, and only 5% children who live in institution, they are orphans.
95%, this is an insanely huge number. How will the reform change this for the better?
Yeah, and we have to know that this is a Soviet system. From this Soviet was built a huge number of institutions, 726 institutions now work, and they are friendly, invite children from the families. And because we have a lot of poor families, because disabilities, because at-risk families, vulnerable families. And we really believe that through this reform, we can have a great impact for not only for children's issues, but for whole nation. Because when child will be able to live in own family, it's mean that the child can have a relation with the family, with parents, with relatives, with friends, with whole community, with society. But because in institution child is isolated, and they have no access to have services, to have relation with the community, with the society.
So let me get this straight. Despite of the fact that children live in institutions together with other children and with grown-ups, they still remain isolated from the main society of Ukraine, which means that they're not used and not ready for adult life.
Yeah, if you not live in institution, it's hard to believe, it's hard to feel what child feel there. Especially very harmful for child under the 3 of age, because child develop very fast, and it hurts the brain of a child. We have a lot of researchers all over the world,
right?
That's extremely important for child under the 3. But older children live in huge premises, these huge buildings, and sometimes 10, 15 children in one room. They have no private space, and it's really a huge problem for this child. It's like communes. It's Soviet communes where child live all time, and because this children who graduate institution, they cannot live normal life. They very hardly socialized. They cannot have strong relation in their own family. That's why statistics says that every third parents who was in institution placed their child to institution.
That's the role model they're used to. How's the reform of the institutionalization is going to change this for the better future of our children of Ukraine?
It's not easy reform because a lot of stakeholders should involve in this reform. It's not only responsibility of one ministry or one organization, it's responsibility of all society, all families.
How many ministries are working on the reform?
I think every ministry should be involved in this reform because
I
it's
agree.
about children.
I agree.
But the main ministries is Ministry of Education because 95 orphanages under the Ministry of Education. It's educational orphanages from the Soviet system. And Ministry of Health, baby houses under the Ministry of Health, and
Okay.
Ministry of Social Policy because children with disabilities goes to the institution under the Ministry of Social Policy. It's very strange system, but it was built in Soviet Union. It's hard to explain so fast how it works, but it's really hurt children because especially if you goes to the baby house, baby home, after 5 years you go to the institution under the Ministry of Education, or if you have a disability, you go to the institutions under the Ministry of Social Policy, and you can live up to 35 years and then go to the other institution. Sometimes children change institutions 10 times. It's have very bad effect of these kids.
As far as I know, the first stage of the reform has already been complete. What's the result of the first stage?
Yeah, we have huge awareness campaign. We have trainings, we have conferences in different regions. Because for now, when we have a strong resistance of institutions, because a lot of stuff is there, and what is interesting, 85% of amount of money goes to the personnel and facilities, not for children. Only 50%, 15% goes especially for children's needs. It's a meal, clothes, medicine. That's why these thousands staff, they don't
It's
want
kind
to
of
lose their
against
job.
the reform,
Yeah,
right?
they don't want to lose their job. And for this time, it's very important to have honest conversation with them that they will not stay without their work. They will not lose their job. They will have new opportunities. They can work in their own communities and give services because we need a lot of services, much more than have institutions. And it's services in schools, it's social services, it's health services. We understand that some of them will not be able to do this, but first of all, we should provide standards of services, standards of social services, and then to provide these services on the community level. It's a key message that these services should work on the community level, not in isolated facilities, but where child live in own family. We should reach these families with their needs, vulnerable families. We should identify in time a problem of a child in this family, because sometimes it's late. When a child in institution, it's very hard to return back a child from institution. It's much better to stop placing child to institution when family in bad condition, when family has no access to services, to create these services for this child in communities in that area.
So, as we have already mentioned, there is second stage of the reform going on right now. What is expected to be implemented during the second stage of the reform? What kind of a progress should we expect?
It is very important stage because now each region having their own regional plan has to develop services in communities, because we have the same time decentralization reform when power and money goes to the community level, but we want responsibility goes to the community level.
So not only power and money, but responsibility also.
Yes,
Great plan.
because they have to know they are responsible for children's issues. They have to know that they have to support in time a vulnerable family, vulnerable child with disability, and what is the problem? I'm talking with them. They don't know how to do this. Sometimes they don't want to do this. It's a different problem.
But in the case when they don't know, how do we educate them properly?
Yeah, because we have trainings now, it's not enough. First of all, we should provide services. Before we providing services, we should make standards of these services. We should understand which money should go from the national levels, from the state level, which money they should spend own money. They have enough of money. That's why we need to have now educational program. And now we have very good contacts here in Canada. Mm-hmm. We have Canadian projects in Ukraine which help us to provide these services. We have pilots in communities now and a lot of organizations who support doing this. But we understand that it's not enough, because on the second stage we will have educational program. We will support communities in the activities which should reach each child. For example, it's develop inclusive education. Mm-hmm. It's daycare centers for children. Mm-hmm. It's small group homes we should implement for children with severe disabilities which live for orphans. Not allow them to live in orphanages, but to create small group homes on the community level. It's alternative care system. Mm-hmm. We should provide this system, because the main result or outcomes of this reform is decreased number of institutions, 70% decreasing. Uh-huh. Yeah, decreased number of children in institutions. It's very important.
So it's a two-way reform. We're decreasing the number of orphans and the children with disability and those who live in institutions.
Yes.
And at the same time, we're decreasing the number of institutions.
Yes, okay. And at the same time, to develop services which will help doing this. The same time, to increase number of children in inclusive education. Mm-hmm. We have very good results. For the last 3 years, we increased 3 times children in inclusive education in schools.
Perhaps you can share a personal story of one of such a child.
Oh, we have a lot of stories, but
well, the
it's
one
very
that
simple.
That
it's
struck
very
your
simple
memory
explained.
most. Okay.
Maybe common story when mom with the 4 or 5 children cannot feed and have a work and don't want to lose work and place 2 or 3 child to institutions. And it's very simple to create special services on the community level. For example, it's after school program where child can stay after school and have a meal 3 times a day and have a different educational program, and then return back home at night and go to school next day, and this mom can freely have their job.
Work and continue supporting.
Yes, continue
the child.
support.
Right.
It really stops a lot of cases when vulnerable family place a child to institution. We have a lot of examples really when very easy to stop this. Very easy support this mom or family. Very easy identify in the beginning this problem and support family, because when child placed in institution, and we have very bad data, or when more than 50% children live 3 years and more, or whole children's life, whole childhood in institution, and it's a main problem, because 3 years in institution, child lose 1 year of development.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and can you imagine when child live whole childhood in institution? That's why it's so hard when you come back to the community, live independent life, live normal life. It's a huge risk to go to a prison. It's huge risk to lose their own children, to be vulnerable.
Well, you're voicing a very serious problem. We're all really hopeful that the reform of the institutionalization is going to solve it as fast as possible. Thank you so much for coming here. Thank you so much for the information you've provided.
Thank you.
That was Mykola Kuleba. He's Ukraine's President Commissioner on Children's Rights. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. We're broadcasting from Toronto, Canada, where the conference on Ukrainian reforms is taking place right now. Stay tuned for more.